Another episode and another table. This is episode 6 of season 2 of On the Table. My name is Tepi.
I'm DJ Black Velvet Khomotso. And of course, your church girl is here.
And then, okay.
Yeah.
And once again, we're ghosting differently this time.
Yep.
Hello, hi, chillers. Hi, ladies.
Yes.
Look, today On the Table is going to be a little different when we're talking about the topic that we're bringing on the table. Shout out to all the chillers. Shout out to everyone who does suggest any topics or would like us to open up a conversation. Mm-hmm. So today we got one from a Zambian chiller.
Woo!
Big shout out to everyone in
Hi,
Zambia as well.
Zambia.
Right, let me read it for you. Okay? It says, my daughter's into boys. Letsang,
Mathata a thomile.
That sounds normal.
Tshepi.
Okay, my daughter's into boys. Ladies, what are some of the things that y'all wish y'all's dads said to y'all during these stages of the first love, first heartbreak, etc.? I don't want to lose my best friend by saying the wrong things. Please help, because the biggest nightmare for every... Something just jumped here. For every father raising a daughter is the time when she starts to see boys. Mm-hmm. A lot of uncertainty can come with it, causing fear, anxiety about my daughter's future. When a girl child gets older and are now into boys or are in the boy phase, a lot can go wrong. And he says he enjoys our conversations. Can we please help him?
Done, Betun.
Books before boys, because boys brings babies.
Because
that's the episode. Bye.
This one actually hits home for me.
Okay.
Well, I'm not I could be a girl child. Hey.
Yes.
Whatever you want to be.
See you.
But I was raised by a single dad who raised 2 girls and 1 boy, being me. I remember this one. It was 2010, probably the 5th of January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know the time?
I'm a Virgo like that.
Time?
No. And we sat, and I was coming to varsity, small town boy coming to Johannesburg. And we had a little conversation around that, you know what, you're going to the big lights. Stay away.
Accurate.
Who's your
So
dad?
it was just like
Lapa?
a very handsome man, you can see by my posture.
I want to deal with him.
But what I'll tell you is, on a serious note, we had the conversation. The interesting part was why not these 3 people.
Sure.
And I went and I kind of had my fingers burnt. And then later I got to understand why we had that conversation. Yeah, the cost of the Zulu and the Swati. More so you, sis.
Side.
Okay.
So it hits home. And clearly this is I love that, a dad thought
to have the conversation.
with
you.
with him, not just see how it goes. And then Amukhalimele in the middle of her whole ship.
Ladies, then, do you feel, or before the feeling, have you had a conversation with your parents, be it mom, be it dad, or both, on sex and men, etc.?
I've never had one with my dad, and I'm assuming this particular chiller is a guy raising a daughter. I've never had one with my dad, but I've always had an open relationship with my mom discussing boys. And also particularly because I never grew up having an interest in boys, generally. So
How boring were you?
I was really like, if you watch On the Table, you would know how many boyfriends I've had. And
Look, let's put it this way. She's been
be
having
quiet.
sex with one person
Be
for 10 years.
quiet. Look at your face.
Talk about stale chips. Jokes.
Mamela, guys, this is a very serious conversation, and I don't like what you're doing to it.
Sure. Go on.
So I've had a very open relationship in discussing boys and relationships and sex with my mom. And I can't remember particularly what she said, but I also think because I didn't have an interest in boys, I wasn't, to an extent, the sex conversation bored me.
Because you went zipping and doing it.
Yeah. And I didn't have an interest in boys.
And for you, Khomoto?
Nah, I was raised by my grandparents. My grandmother was always open, but the person who was most open about these kind of conversations was my grandmother. But my grandfather, there's this one day that I was walking from school, and then there's this guy that I used to crush on, but I don't think he knew that I was crushing on him. Guy decides like, oh, Ntwana Sekasi, let me just help you carry your school bag. Yo, nigga saw us. I don't know what happened, but from that moment, somehow I was at the gate. The poor guy was getting beat by my grandfather. So it was not an easy conversation to have with him, because if he ever saw me with a boy, I was going to get a lashing. And not just me, also that guy was going to get a beat down. So by virtue of that, guys in my hood were never approaching me. There was never a time where they'd be like, I actually like you, I'd like to be your friend. They were always getting beat downs from my granddad. But my grandma, she only started having the conversation with me when I let her know that, oh, I just had my first period. And that opened the conversation, because she's like, oh, do you know what that means? Now it means you need to run away from boys because you're going to get pregnant. That was as far as how the conversation went, but not as deeply as how my mom had the conversations with me. Her conversations with me were so extreme. Some parents would think Uguti Hanamulao, she was disorderly. But I'm very grateful for the type of conversations that she had with me, because she helped me understand that having a relationship with a boy doesn't always mean that you guys are going to have sex. But do understand that it's a natural order of things. If you happen to be in a room with a guy that actually likes you and you like him back, that one thing can lead to the other. Therefore, you need to condomize. If you don't want to condomize, mtase, there's family planning. Yes, people will say, family planning, there's HIV, blah, 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 blah. She had all those conversations with me. And lucky for me, I grew up in an era where we used to have those booklets, the love life booklets that would get at school. So the conversation was not that hard to have. But as a father, I can imagine, because my partner has 3 girls, and every time I bring up that conversation, he just doesn't want to hear it.
The partner you're dating now has 3 kids.
I carry it's her guys. Kanti.
Damn.
That episode where we were talking about court orders.
But you remember, I couldn't keep up.
We have 3 kids. One is 11.
Together. Okay, sure.
One is 11, and obviously now she's starting to crush on boys and whatever. But she can talk to me, but not the father. The father is not hearing it.
How many of us were... How many of our parents have used shock tactics to educate us about sex?
What's a shock tactic?
O tlo tshwara ke AIDS. Bashimane kaofela ba na le AIDS. Ha ba ka o tshwara o tlo preka.
Parents do that.
How ka preka ke tlo tseya all your stuff, pack them in a black bag and throw them out.
Now what?
I'm triggered.
It was never done to me, but I do it.
Huh?
Why would you do that? And that bothers me, because you're much, much learned than our parents were.
Yeah, sure. I'm kind of, I'm one person. I'm just like, I'm not. Also, it's a conversation for another day. Whereas if you're going to make me uncle, wait for until I'm ready to be uncle too. But anyway, I only do it to say, I only do it to kind of like shed light, not necessarily to shock anyone, to kind of enlighten them. Okay, if you choose to play with boys, you might just fall pregnant and it will derail 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're not ready yet.
At an age-appropriate time, I assume you're having this conversation.
18 to 30, very appropriate.
And what's the tone you use when you're having this conversation?
I'm me all the time, girl.
Oh.
This is me.
So in that tone.
Wait, that's when... just so you hear me. Because if I'm, guttered and high temperatures, you're not going to hear anything that I'm saying. But you'll only see my actions that are anger, that is to shock you. But if I'm having a conversation, it's more so with a little girl or even a girl in her teens. It's very important. And I love what this man is doing with his daughter. Love it.
So here's the thing. When this topic came up, I immediately thought of, in fact, when you just said he's much learned than our parents. There are different parenting styles, and some we adapt from our parents, and some you learn them, in life and through life. There are some people who believe and keep this parenting style. You're going to, I'm not going to discuss sex with you. Ungumdana. Know your place. and that works for them. And maybe it worked for them from their parents. Now she's adapting the same style to her child to say, "Asizuthetha ngamakhwenkwe apha endlini. It's not a topic we're gonna entertain." And you know, because ngawo la ngamakhwenkwe la 13, 14. But also then the flip side of it, it's a learned parent who's saying this, and it seems to work. So then the dynamic comes when it's the implementation stage, right? Because the child now is more exposed to what you were and what your parents were. They're exposed even at school, but still at home, it's a topic we can't have. And to some extent, we can't dismiss it. To some extent, it works because if dikenda lala nengwe, my mother will smell me the minute dingene 18. Uba bendileli nengwenkwe. And it keeps
even false on its own.
And it keeps her from doing whatever. And then to another extent, it's like, umama kafuna uva ngamakhwenkwe, then I'm gonna go to Auntie Tepi and say, Auntie Tepi, I did 1, 2, 3.
Look, scare tactic parenting, especially when it comes to issues of sex, in my personal experience, don't work. And let me tell you why. My mother used scare tactics for me. May her beautiful soul rest in peace. But as a result, and I'm not saying she's at fault, it has nothing to do with her. But I explored. I explored things that she had said would get me sick. I had explored things that she said would get me pregnant. And maybe as a sign of rebellion, sure. And maybe at some point, experience and life, you know? Which is what I don't want to pass on to my children or my nieces. I want to have honest, open conversations that are age appropriate, at an age appropriate time. I don't want to sit with my 11-year-old right now and talk to her about anal sex.
Of course.
Unless
she comes and asks.
When she didn't ask me about anal sex. I don't want to sit and... What I want to do with my 11-year-old right now is to teach her how to properly wash her vagina. Those are the chats that I want to have. I want to say, I will do it for you if you feel like I'll wait to handle and then I'll show you how to do it. Right? If she's ever so curious, the channel is open.
Okay.
Come to me. I will not tell you when I broke my virginity. Maybe I've said it before. So if you remember it, whatever. Good for you. I broke my virginity at a very young age. At an age where, after you break your hymen, blood comes out. That age, I went to my mom and I said to her, "Oh my God, I just played a bit." Stupid. But of course, I was young, so I couldn't really even understand what that means. We were playing around, but I didn't understand how serious this was. I don't want to say I consented. That's a conversation for another day. So my mom then said to me, she didn't sit me down properly to have the conversation with me. And sure, she doesn't want to come to her child who's still quite young at that point to have a conversation of if you've broken your virginity or things like that. Look, I'm very glad she didn't get to that point or do that. However, I really wish there was a proper way in which my mom had addressed sex to all of us, including my sister who's grown and is still too scared to talk about sex openly. And I think it's the way my mom had raised us. My sister will not talk about sex in the manner that I do, as freely as I do. Remember, my mom died when I was still young. She was married, so she got a proper upbringing and conversation about sex if they had the conversation to begin with. Mine was purely on the basis of shock. And then she had many children. She was tired, man. At this point, she's just like, get pregnant. I'm going to fucking chase you out of my house. And that's that on that. It has to be age-appropriate conversations. Do not shock me into having sex or not having sex. Don't tell me that, life is going to go crumbling in tiny little fucking pieces because you had sex. And the only conversations, quick one for me, the last one, the only conversation my sister had with me about sex was that, do you want me to get your contraceptive? This was at 14. Because my cousin had gotten pregnant at 14. So she said, "Ubuya how about the contraceptive, and I'll get you a contraceptive, and we'll keep it moving."
It wasn't a detailed.
Absolutely wrong.
If there's anything that I can say that will probably shock a lot of people, I hear people. I even hear us talking about being age appropriate and and a lot of us are sort of praying that it's at 18. But for me, an age appropriate time was any time that child, whether at 9 years old,
was
whether
asking
at
the
10,
question.
because I had my period as early as 9 years old. And it was very early. I did not know what the hell was that, what the hell was going on with me. I was under the impression that as soon as you start bleeding, it means when a boy touched you. And this is what happened. And I started crying because I didn't know. There was no boy that touched me. It just happened. I was at school and it happened.
Oh my God, I
but
want to
where I was
interrupt you so
going with
badly.
this, you can. It's like, do you want me to?
I need you to continue, but I think I might forget.
Okay,
but
go.
on quickly.
No, I was going to go a bit longer. Go. I'll come back.
Okay. So you got your period at 9. Just because I got my period at 9, does that mean I need to be having the sex conversation? My
No.
body is doing what it's doing. And at 9. Hormones work differently for Lerato. Hormones work differently for a say,
I think-
example. So just because you got your period at 9, do you think that was the age appropriate time that sex had to be discussed? Remember, you didn't have sex. You had no curiosity on sex. Your body just did what it does.
In my experience, I think it was the appropriate time to have that conversation. Remember, we are growing up in different areas, different cultures, different cassis, for lack of a better word. Where I came from, even now, children as early as 8 years old, you would hear them say things and you would get shocked. Does this child even know what she's saying? You know, there's boys in my hood. When I go down the road, there's a girl who's passing by. You look at this boy, he's probably 10 or 9, and he's talking about, and you're thinking to yourself, you need to start having those conversations with your girl children to help them understand. As much as you are not curious about what's happening, you probably have no idea. Things are being said in school. Teachers are teaching these kids how. I remember the first time seeing how to put on a condom. I was in primary school and they came with this huge banana and it was a joke to many of us.
Well,
but to some, they knew exactly what that was. Whether sexual harassment, whether they've seen it on TV, whether they've watched The Bold and the Beautiful,
Or that they've been
don't
violated
underestimate the fact that there's children as young as 9, 10 who know what sex is.
However, the conversation that you have with a 9-year-old can't be the same conversation that you're having with a 17-year-old.
True.
Sure.
Hence, they use the banana, not a dildo.
True.
I think what Utebi was trying to say is, if we heard you correctly, did you know anything about sex prior
Yes.
to you having your period?
Yes, because I had friends that were older than me. I was in grade 5, but I've had friends that were doing grade 7. And
Okay, so you knew a bit.
I
But
knew
there
a bit.
So in this case, I think Utebi is asking from a point of view where your child is not exposed to that
any of-
much knowledge about sex at that age, and they start to have their period. Would then that be an appropriate conversation to have without even the child asking ukuthi, because you can basically explain ukuthi, it's just your body doing a natural thing. This is what's going to happen every month. This is how you need to take care of yourself. And the conversation can end there for now.
Yeah, the conversation can end there for now, but I still say personally from my experience, it's safer. You don't have to give me all the gory details of what actually happens. But as much as my body is changing as a female, help me understand that even for a boy, it's changing. Sometimes, you remember I told you about my nephew. He's 3 and he would have an erect penis. He has no idea what that is. He's a child. As soon as he sees his penis does that, he goes, Mama ngifuna ukuchama, but he means he wants to pee. And he would go pee and that little thing will just sleep.
And that's exactly what it
that's
does.
normal.
That's exactly
That's
what it does.
You
It
tried
has
something
nothing to do.
else.
Yes, but there's boys that are around the age of 8 or 9 because bahlala estradeni, they chill with these boys. These conversations are happening behind your back. Rather give this child information that is age appropriate for them to understand which these are the things that are happening. However, it does not mean that I need to take whatever education that I'm receiving at home to go explore. What I'm saying is rather give them the correct information than the wrong information that they will receive as strategy.
Do you know there's also such a thing as information overload?
That's where I'm going.
I get
so
it.
how do you know? Remember now we're living in a completely different world, right? Where social media and there's the internet. Where
And TV.
when we were curious about sex, we didn't have the luxury of going on Google.
Yeah.
You had soul
Our
seat.
children, unfortunately, go on Google and the first thing you will see is X video.
X and XX.
My fave. But can't be my 9-year-old's fave.
Hey, you will be
Because
shocked.
they're curious and this is what they've heard. Right. Example. A friend's niece, let me say it that way. At a very young age, at 7, was curious about sex. But not curious about sex itself or the act itself. Was curious about the words that were used at school.
Yeah.
Came home, didn't tell mom, but wants to find out what they are. Look, they're as silly as gom sex or some shit like that. Like stupid things like that. Right? Because remember, also at the end of the day, they are 7.
Yeah.
She goes on the phone, Googles what sex. Of course the algorithm's gonna come running. Come on my phone, honey, and my algorithm's gonna fuck you up. But point is, she Googled it because they know how to use Google. I gotta live off a tablet. They know how to use it. They used it, she used it, and nothing but explicit content
Comes
through.
out. Yeah.
Right. She was not too curious about the sex itself, just what she heard.
Yes.
That's one. Let's put that on the side. Now let's go here. You're saying, I'm going to have the conversation. How do you know you're having the conversation without overloading child with information? Or you're overloading child with information she wasn't necessarily curious about. So, yes, I've heard about sex before. Yes, I've heard. Because remember also, your kids are growing around many other different kids. Some live Gamadu one room where they see their parents have sex every night, where they hear these conversations happen, and they come out and they share them with their friends. So you might take it for granted that you guys are having silent sex with boyfriend so that you can try you can try to protect your children from things they shouldn't, but there are others who are not so receptive and not so privileged. They are seeing this every single day and this is their life. They go out and they try to practice it, etc. But your child has heard it, but doesn't necessarily feel like it's something that speaks to her or to him. How do you make sure you have this conversation without bombarding them with information, number one, that's not appropriate for their age, that they are not too curious about, and also, like I said, here's one who was Googling gom sex. She's not really curious about sex, guys.
No,
she just heard what gom sex is and she wanted to go on.
What has actually worked for me from my experience and the type of conversations I have with them, I always try to find out first what they understand of what they're asking me.
You need to create an openness.
If they ask.
If they ask, I always try to understand with, okay, if you're asking me this, what do you understand of what you've just asked me? And I take it from there. That's how I would know, okay, you don't have to go there. You don't have to go penetration. You don't have to go clitoris. This child doesn't understand what that is. But do make the child understand books before boys bring babies. You know what I mean by that? I mean, boys before books bring babies. Mommy is finished.
And here's one thing that we need to also look into, or maybe have a conversation around it. Irrespective of the tone and the approach that you use, a child, you can sit your child down. But if they want to go experiment, they will go either way.
Definitely.
I just said how I had it. I had the talk, but I experimented anyway.
Sure, me too.
She didn't have the conversation, but she went and experimented anyway. It's all, for me, it's about creating an openness with your child. I didn't get if, Sir was married or not, or was a single parent. But it's important to create that openness with your child for them to be able to say, okay, gom sex again, I don't know what that is, but I'm just,
Because there's no such.
We learned a new thing today.
Look, I know a lot about sex and I know there's no such thing.
I would want for my child to be open enough to say to me, okay, this is what gom sex again. As much as I had the openness to go and say, I don't like rugby that much. Let's find something with a little bit of femininity in it.
Yes.
And what happened there, I was in Scouts for 8 years. So it's just creating an openness with your child, whether they will experiment or not. Don't be bothered or scared by that.
When does then the openness of I realize my child is not as feminine, or I realize my child is not as masculine. And my child seems to be leaning more into a side that I don't necessarily understand. Mm-hmm. Or my child is now, I feel like, is developing, feelings for the opposite sex. At which time is that also age appropriate? Because there's also sex involved there. Yeah. There's also sexual activity that is involved there. How do we have that conversation?
In my experience, you don't have to have a conversation, because if I had a twin brother and he was heterosexual, would he have gone and said, "Hi, my name's Katlego and I'm heterosexual"? Absolutely not.
But there's a sex conversation that needs to be had nonetheless.
And we had it at a time where he felt like, okay, now he's coming out of my nest. Let me just have this conversation. It was late, just after matric. Mm-hmm. It was late, if you really...
Fuck, I was having... Sorry.
No, but I wasn't...
Here's the thing.
At the time, I was kissing the town red, but I wasn't,
dipping and dipping.
I wasn't dipping and doing it. But the conversation literally starts... Your child doesn't have to come to you with this.
Firstly.
Yeah, you know your child. You can tell, okay, he's moving a little different. He's moving sideways. And then you have the conversation. Fortunately for me, I never had to say, come out of the closet, or even say, okay, I just had a boner. What the hell's going on here? At the time where he was comfortable enough to have that conversation, he had it. And it wasn't a question of, are you gay or are you having sex?
It was
literally, here's what's going to happen. He assumed it, and he was right since grade 4.
So then at an age, in terms of age, when we're having this conversation,
I'd say 10, because you find that the age. Yeah.
For me, there's no age, really. It also ties in with what Khomotso said. It's about the questions that your child is asking at the time. That's where you get the level of maturity or understanding of certain things and certain topics. Then you start engaging them on that level. Like my sister, for example, a few years ago, I was busy in the shower, and she's like, "Mama, what is a G-spot?" Out of the blue. And she wasn't like 4 or anything. She was in primary school, though, maybe the higher grades in primary. But it's also a conversation that she had overheard.
Because
being spoken about
from
girls, there's a choir and whatever. But the point is, then you ask yourself, or her rather, what do you think it is? What were they saying about this? And the fact that she's got a sixth sense about it's probably something, I shouldn't maybe not be talking about or engaging in now because of the way the girls were having the conversation, because it was behind closed doors and whatnot. Then you start engaging them from there. For me, there's no age. But also, I also strongly believe that, hi man, mina
Sometimes,
I'm going to but I'm going to teta something that will probably shock a lot of parents. In my group of friends, I was the last one to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
Look at you now.
the age that I had sex for the first time. Remember, I was the last one. I was 15. So imagine the other group. How old were they? They were already experienced. They were having these conversations with me. And lucky for me, I had a mother who was able to sit me down and have these kind of conversations with me. And how she did it, it was so flawless, because I would find myself and my younger sister being embarrassed. Sihleke, Mama, what do you mean? But to an extent, we knew exactly what she meant. But I was blessed enough for her, because she did not just keep it at sex. She also kept it at how to wash your vagina properly, how to see when something is wrong, how to identify an STI or an STD or whatever it is, right? How to identify that when you're about to go on your period, there's things that happen to you. You get mood swings, you get this, you get that. Even to the point of your first heartbreak. She was that woman for me. Yes, mothers in particular, single mothers in particular, can be toxic, because all of them, if not most of them, want to villainize. No, they want to villainize amatota. Amatota is injama. And here you are with 5 kids in the house, but you keep telling me Guti amatota is inja and all of this. Ne? Yes. Yes. But I'm even losing my trail of thought.
Sorry.
But she was that woman who was like, yo, Wanaka, first heartbreaky papa. This is what you're gonna experience. And I experienced it. And heartbreaky when I was so stupid. Guy promised to come pick me up for a date. Guy didn't show up. I cried.
And then your
so
heart
while you're
dropped.
on that point, then I think the chiller's question is not even
About
sex in particular, but in relationships with boys.
That
Because
you wish the conversations were had with you.
you know, because if we're going the route of your relationship, I did a bit of homework. I asked a few people, Ukuthi, what would they have wished that their fathers and mothers had told them? One that I liked, Uti, the ones who like you and the ones who don't like you will tell you the same thing.
Wow.
Sure.
Okay.
Yo, can I
That is hectic.
Okay.
And that is factual.
The ones that like you and the ones that don't like you
They'll
will
tell you
the
the
same
same
thing.
thing.
Kusenjalo even in adulthood.
Ne?
That's where it's coming from.
And then they go on to say, which is why I would not tell her what she wants to hear, but I would tell her how to treat herself, how to love herself, how to respect
I think
herself.
that's the most important one for me.
In that way, she's then able to discern.
Bullshit. Bullshit. I love myself with all my heart. I can't discern.
No. You can't discern.
I can't discern. There's
Spend
no
time with
bullshit.
yourself.
I've lived alone for many. I spend time with myself in it. Go find yourself. Hey, I've solo tripped alone. I cannot tell you
when he's
in Kata. I can't tell you when it's discerned. I can't tell
it
you.
because you
For
give
me, it's in the
people-
actions. It's how, because here's, okay, I never had that conversation with T. Okay, in a relationship, this is how.
Yeah.
But because I knew, I was raised by a man, and it happens that I'm a man who dates other men. So I know how to be loved by a man, if I'm making sense.
Yeah.
If it seems any other way, the slightest disrespect, shift. Yeah, call me boring,
Remember
call me
we had
pedantic,
this conversation.
whatnot. You move.
We had more or less the conversation.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we're almost out of time. But the conversations you've had with your friends on what you wish they could have told you. You have not told us what you feel your parents or you wish your parents could have said to you when you had started dating.
Oh, that's what I said. I don't think there's anything my mom really left out. Because my dad was a
I'm gonna kick a dog. Direct
Oh, my Zambian people, my Namibian people.
yeah, my dad was a kaba inja. I don't care utu ichomi yako kayo chomi yako. They kaba and fun kaka out.
Yeah, that was my
That's
grandfather.
my father.
That's so true.
That is my father. Even when I was older, like my current husband, we found him in the house. I was literally busy in the kitchen. He's in the laundry. He was standing in the kitchen with me. My dad comes in and he was like,
Njogaba nkele.
Guys, no.
and my dad talks like this, ati makwengwe utendlini yami.
No.
That's my father. But then my mother, we've had, there's nothing they didn't tell me. And like I said, because I didn't have a particular interest in boys and in sexual conversations, so maybe I wasn't there then.
And she was able to.
Yeah, so
okay.
it was like very... And I would get disturbed by my dad because I was like, what are you barking for? Because I can't do and I can't because and go labo.
I think my parting shot on this one is let the conversation be age appropriate. I think that's a very important thing. And even if it means you have to sit and YouTube and Google things to see what will work for you and your kind of parenting style. We can sit here and only have a conversation about what we wish could have happened or share our experiences and how they may come a little bit close to what you have experienced. However, I do feel like do what works for your household. Do what works for you and your parenting style. However, though, I do feel the fear, the putting fear on your child to act a certain way, to think a certain way where sex is concerned, that's probably a big mistake. And I say that because when you say don't press that red button, they'll do exactly that. They'll press that red button. So remember also, like you had said, they will have sex regardless, my honey.
Whether you have the
when you say
conversation or
when,
not.
because they go to school and come back, they'll have sex at school. No, come high, we've been having it. But point is, that's what happens. So try to make sure that whatever it is that you have or the conversations that you have are age appropriate and that the conversations are being had, both for the male, both for the females, be it hetero, be it not. Those conversations need to be had, and they need to be had properly. They need to be had fairly. Okay, not because the one is gay or the other one is lesbian or the other one is straight. Those conversations, sex is sex. STD is an STD.
And
HIV
relationships
is HIV.
are relationships.
And relationships are relationships.
We dribble
and
you
they
anyway.
need to be had, and they need to be had correctly. So all you need to do is sit and think of your household, how it would work for you, whether it needs you need to go through therapy to have this conversation. Because look, our parents also need to fix themselves mentally.
A lot of them.
And our parents failed to fix themselves mentally before they raised us. So they took their traumas and put them onto us. Let's not be
conversation
those
for
kind of
another
parents.
day.
And now their kids are recovering from those traumas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have nothing to say but to say, you know what, create an open environment for these children. Don't downplay the fact that some of them do know what sex is. They may have not engaged in it yet, but they know it. And some of them understand it. Ukuthi wena ucabanga ukuthi uhamba naye esontweni every Sunday, trust me, lapha e-church choireni ziyasha, ngiyaqhuma lapha nje. Be careful.
She just had to bring this church.
Yeah, she just had to. Ghost, last one from you.
Last but not least, I would say that have a conversation with your kids, work at having relationships with your kids, grow the relationship, and as your kids grow older, still maintain that sense of openness. And shout out to all the dads doing the good work.
Well
Yeah,
done.
shout out to this chiller, because I think it takes a lot for a parent to even ask and be open to hearing about such conversations, especially where it involves boys and sex and whatnot. So shout out to him.
Yeah.
You're already doing great. Don't be scared.
And the
keep
heartbreak is coming.
Keep at it.
And their heartbreak
Be
is
ready for
coming.
the heartbreak. Hey, no
And
matter
be
how
ready
much
with a
self-love
box
you
of
can
tissues.
teach them. Anyways, that's how we wrap it up. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. And of course, if you have anything that you'd like to say or you want us to open up a conversation, please leave your comments right here under somewhere there. All right. My name is Tepi.
I'm DJ Black Velvet.
And church girl over here.
Cheerio.
And goes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.